Welcome to this episode of Successfully Single Podcast. Today we are going to be discussing the 3 reasons you may not be ready to date. My name is Leslie. I am the host, and this is my co-host today, Jodi Barchetti. Jodi, would you like to tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. As she said, my name is Jodi Barchetti. I am an entrepreneur. I am the owner of JodiKakes, where I make customized cakes and treats. I'm a mentor and educator to our youth and young adults. I teach financial literacy and entrepreneurship, and I am highly active in the agriculture community. My purpose and passion in food is to teach our community the importance of understanding what we put in our body affects how we feel affects how we think, and how we think affects how we act. So I'm happy to be here today.
I'm happy to have you, Jodi. I couldn't think of anyone better to be on this episode with me, because I know we have talked about relationships a lot and in different aspects. And so it's a topic that needs to be addressed over and over again, right? Yeah. Everybody's like, everybody always want to talk about dating and what's going on? But it's a topic because it's an issue, and we as women struggle with that, okay? Yeah. Men struggle with that. Mm-hmm. And it's something that, it's a hot topic. Dating is a hot topic.
No, I totally agree. I believe that in our current climate of society and our culture, that we have lost the understanding of what it means to date. Mm-hmm. A lot of people are so sexually energized and driven that is really the first thing that they connect on in a relationship, without taking the time to date and get to know each other before they jump into that next step.
That's true. You don't think about it. You just think about, oh, I want it, I need it. He looks good, she looks good, and I'm just going with it. Right. Yes. I'm just going to dip into it. You don't think about the repercussions. You don't really look back at your past and you count on your hand, well, that didn't work. Why do I keep attracting these same type of men or women? Why?
Well, I believe for a lot of us, and from my own experience, is that a lot of times we just are going through the motions.
I want to spark that thought in your mind that maybe there's some things I need to work on with myself. And so the first reason you may not be ready to date is your relationship with God is rocky. It's not stable. It's a lot going on. You're unsure about where you and God stand. You're unsure about, you're not an avid prayer, maybe, could be. You don't really read the Bible. You don't do anything to edify yourself to become a better person as far as your relationship with God. You don't get fed. You don't do any of those things. But we think, okay, all right, I'm ready to date. I want him. But where are the standards on those situations? What are the rules on that if you're getting ready to take someone into your... And the only way you can take someone into your space is with having a right relationship with God. I'm not saying you got to be perfect, because I'm not perfect. But you have to start somewhere. And the word says in Isaiah 58:8, it says, then your light will break forth like the dawn, and your healing will quickly appear. Then your righteousness will go before you, and the glory of the Lord will be your rear guard. You need God to be your rear guard when you're dealing with people. You have to, because we are imperfect people. You have to have the rear guard of God to deal with people.
I agree. I believe that, so from my experience as I go through my growth and period of transformation, a part of that has been strengthening my relationship with God. Mm-hmm. And I've learned that for a long time, I lived off my own intuition and my own instincts, and a lot of times things didn't come out right. And as I strengthen my relationship with God and I lean on Him more and follow His guide and His instinct, when things come about, He's my shield, He's my protection, and He's my armor. And so even within a relationship with yourself,
Mm-hmm.
you still need to be protected,
Mm-hmm.
because we create our own harmful habits and ways that we don't realize affect us, mentally, spiritually, and physically. And, a Christian and a follower of Christ, God should be the center of all of our relationships, the center of our relationship with Him, the center of our relationship with ourselves, and to the center of our relationships with other people. And so if we're not, connected or tapped in to that relationship with Him, how can He guard us? How can He protect us and keep us safe, even from ourselves?
He can't. He can't. We're really putting ourselves in a situation to be harmed.
Yeah.
Because you're out here with no protection from God to a certain extent.
Yeah.
You're walking blind.
Well, so for me, as I was reading and studying, right, I connected with the parable of sour, right?
Yes.
And for me, that resonated with, is your relationship stable? Is your relationship with yourself stable? Having a solid foundation is important in every relationship for it to be prosperous and fruitful. And then the parable of the sower talks about the farmer that's sowing his seeds. And when you do things with intent and purpose and preparation, how you can be prosperous. But without all of that, you're just wasting, right? So the farmer is sowing his seeds and he throws them, and in some areas, they don't grow because they were thrown into an area with thorns. So when the plant, produced, it didn't live and it withered because the thorns consumed it. Some of the area was on rocky road, and so it didn't get absorbed into the ground, and the seeds dried and withered away. But when the seeds were placed into fertile, healthy soil, they reproduced the little crop in tenfold. And forgive me, guys, because I may not be quoting this exactly through scripture, but
close.
And so for me, what that led me to understand in regards to my relationship with God in regards to dating, right, is that you have to have a fertile, stable foundation for the relationship to grow and be prosperous and produce fruit. And that starts with your relationship with God. Is your soil healthy? Is your foundation fertile? Do you have ground to stand on so that you can grow? And when it's not, as the the parable tells us, all the other seeds that were planted elsewhere where the soil was not fertile did not prosper. So how can our relationships prosper if we don't have a stable foundation?
How? Because what just came out of Jodi's mouth about the parable is beautiful. And I think a lot of times we look for that Cinderella type of relationship, and we don't get that. But what I hear you saying, if we take time to soil the ground, to dig it up, to plant those seeds, we're going to come out with something beautiful. We as single women, we want something beautiful.
Yeah.
So we have to till the ground. We have to plant those seeds, dig it up, water it, and watch it grow.
Yes.
And it cannot do that without doing it the way the parable said and the way that Jodi translated it. There's another scripture. So as I stated before, I wanted to reference scripture because it goes so well with how God wants us to live and what we need to do. And I found this scripture in 1 Peter 1, 3, and 11. It says they must turn from evil and do good. They must seek peace and pursue it. You have to seek peace and you got to pursue it. This is the way where we can have that fruitful life and multiply. And multiply doesn't have mean in children. It can mean wealth. It can mean in good relationships. It can mean in good, healthy family relationships in every area of your life. What do you think, Jodi?
I agree. So it leans back into what we were talking about. You know, what we're talking about is your relationship and your foundation with God, right? So the verse in the chapter is actually what's happening in this part of the story. It's talking about fasting, and it's talking about you know, so you fasted, right, in reverence to me, God. But now that you're done with your day of fasting, you just do as you please and whatever you want, right? And what happened to your sacrifice for me? Just on this day, only this one day. And it's like keeping the sustainability of a relationship is not momentary. A lot of times we grab onto God in moments of our life where we are, you know, seeking desperation or trauma. And it's like, no, I'm here all the time. Not just sometimes. It's having a half heart and being on the fence, right? And it's a part of, you know, stabilizing and strengthening your relationship with God when you come to terms and realize, like, you can't hide from God. He sees what we do all the time. Even when we're not doing it and we just thinking about it, he knows these things. And so strengthening your foundation with him and leaning into your faith will give you such a sense of freedom and purpose, right? That you have a different understanding of yourself and your purpose and meaning in life, and which in part affects how you interact with other people, which impacts your relationship.
There's one scripture that says in Luke 8:48, it says, "Then he said to her, 'Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace.'" See, faith, they say if you have faith as a grain of a mustard seed. My pastor says this. You can say to the mountain to move, and that mountain will move, and nothing will be impossible to you. And you know what I'm hearing in my spirit right now? Get out of the way. Get out of the way and let God do something in you. In return, God will give you what is supposed to come to you, whether it's marriage, whether it's not marriage. He will make your life fruitful and it will multiply. Period.
Yeah. I think that leads into our a good leadway into our second question, right? So have you dealt with your traumas? This could be another reason why you may not be ready to date yet. A lot of us, sometimes we don't acknowledge that we have things that we need to deal with, and we don't realize that not dealing with these things are the reasons why the same things keep happening to us. You know, sometimes, I don't know about y'all, but I have wondered in my past and previously, like, how I keep getting in the same situation, but with a different person, right? Same experience, the same, like, a totally different person, right? And it's because I hadn't healed myself from the traumas that I had experienced and the things that had a stronghold on me, you know, poor habits, unhealthy behaviors that I adapted and created over, you know, years of time and periods. And a lot of times we go from one relationship to the next without taking a break to digest everything that happened and deal with it And what happens is we just bring all that stuff with us into our next relationship.
Right into it.
And so it carries over with us because we're not dealing with it. And that's how you get this baggage, right? Bag lady, Erica Badu. You know, you dragging them bags with you. Just from one, and you just collecting them as you continuously go. If you never take the time to stop and reassess and do self-reflection and really look in the mirror and address why you're in this cycle and this pattern of unhealthy behaviors.
I think for me, sometimes you have triggers or you have signs that you know you're dealing with trauma, but you want a relationship.
Yeah.
And sometimes by getting in the relationship, it can make the trauma even worse. I know for me, there was a time that I felt like I was ready to date a few years ago. Okay, I'm going to let him do what he wants to do. I can do what I want to do. Everything's good. We're together all the time. And then all of a sudden, he's like, oh, I want to go to my boy's house. And I'm like, huh? What? Mm-hmm. But I thought I was ready to do that. I thought I was ready to accept the fact that we are not going to be together all the time. Jodi, it didn't work out. It was a fight every weekend. Oh, you getting ready to leave? What? But I had been abandoned by my father. And so when a man picks up and tells me they're leaving, if they don't do it a certain way, or if I feel like there's a hidden agenda,
It's a trigger.
it triggers me.
Yeah.
It triggers me. And so now I know it triggers me. You have to deal with it first. And then when it's time for that relationship, you have to let them know, hey, babe, I understand you want to go places, but we're not going to be sitting on the couch watching the football game and then you pop up and say, oh, I'm going to leave and go to my boy's house. Like, let me know you have plans for the day. Like, don't just pick up and bounce on me. I mean, that might sound crazy, but because of what I've been through, we got to walk this a different walk. And it might not be I'm trying to control your life. I'm healing from trauma. And I'm being honest with you about it.
So let me ask you this then, right? Because it just like sparked this question in my mind. 2 questions. Is there ever a point where we're completely healed, right? And can you date if you're not healed? I had this asked and proposed to me before at a table discussion. And for me, my first response was, yeah, as long as the person is working on themselves and, then yeah. But I realize, right, that
there's levels.
Healing is a process, right? Like, and it's levels to it, right? But when you're not working
on it intensely,
right, it's a trigger. Everything is like a poke and and so I do believe that you need to, I don't even want to use the word healed, but you need to be in a working space, like where you're processing things. But
you're being transparent.
There you go.
About your feelings and your triggers.
Yes. And that communication is key in these situations. Because what I heard you say was, we're hanging out and we're, enjoying each other's time. We're watching the game, and then all of a sudden you got to go. Well, it could have easily been not a trigger for you if the communication was there and say, hey, babe, I know we're hanging out right now, but, so-and-so just hit me up. I'm about to go hang out. Like, I identify with that as also having worked through having abandonment issues with my parents, specifically my father, right? He was in and out of my life for most of my life. And until I started really focusing on myself and working on my hurts and habits, I never realized that I had abandonment issues, which caused me to develop codependency issues in a relationship. Because like you said, as soon as we're not together or you want to be apart from me, I'm like, why? To me,
like, what is it about me? Like, or, you know,
Yeah,
do you
like,
not want me? Is it about
that's
someone else?
unhealthy.
Yes, it is.
Codependent habits. So just like we have boundaries, right? When you are in a healthy relationship with yourself first, right? Because it starts with yourself.
You got to be in love with yourself first.
How can you have a healthy, successful relationship with someone else if, one, you don't first have one with God and then yourself? You know, we all have traumas and hurts and habits and hang-ups that, you know, we will address throughout our whole existence of life. And it's about, you know, how we address them and move on with them.
So let me ask you this, Jodi. Do you think if you're in counseling, do you think it's good to date while you're in counseling dealing with the trauma? Because you kind of have a coach along the way. You know, because we know, I mean, the word says.
So I think this leans into, what does dating mean? Right? So I think that a lot of times we get away from what it means to date, because people don't date anymore. They just meet, sex, and now they just in this thing.
Right.
I think that for me, when you're dating someone, is where you're taking the time to get to know each other. You're taking the time to learn each other and connect. And I do believe that if you know how to date appropriately, yeah. Because there's nothing wrong with companionship and friendship. The issue becomes having sex and intertwining spiritually and intimately before we really figure out if this person is really meant, if we're meant for that. Because every relationship that you form with the opposite sex is not always intended to be intimate. A man can be friendly to you. He can be courteous to you. He can be helpful and supportive to you and not have to be sexually intended. But all men don't. That's not every man's purpose.
But what about if you've been molested? If you've been molested by men, then here you come. You
Wow.
Because when a man is nice to you, you think they want something from you. So you're willing to give that to them, and you jump in and you clamp on. So but I do feel like, even in the midst of us trying to decide who's healed and who's not healed, if we still look at the pattern about having the relationship with God, seeking Him, tilling the ground, putting that water in that soil, putting the seed in there, doing all those things, I believe God will direct us if we consult Him. Because that's a problem in the whole thing. We don't consult Him, but we have to be honest with our trauma and our triggers. And I think for me, I'm going to talk about me again. I look the part, okay? Now, I am a lot better than I was back in the day, because now I know it's just not your spiritual, not your relationship with God. You got to work on your mental health in order not to go back to who you used to be. But I now know things about me I didn't know before. I now understand the equation. The equation is, if I get in a relationship with this man and I'm still having strong codependent issues, it's not going to work. I can't go in there fake about who I am. I have to be honest with who I am ahead of time to see if it's something they even want to deal with. Because like Jodi said, the word healed, I mean, I still may always have issues, but God may send someone to help me
Mm-hmm.
who understands my issues.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't be full fledged out here just wilding out and expect a man to date me.
No, no, no. So it's funny that you said that. So I was having a recent conversation about just exactly about that, right? It's like, what is your purpose with meeting somebody, right? So let's take all these words out, right? Dating and healed and healing, right? So let's kind of just break it down in real simple layman's terms, right? What is your purpose? What's your intentions when you meet somebody, right? Are you meeting somebody to build and grow and look for a future and companionship and to have a life together? Are you out here lusting, right? So lusting after someone versus loving after someone. It's easy to lust after somebody from their immediate outward appearance. But it's hard to love after someone for that outward appearance. It's difficult until you learn somebody, to love after them. And so a lot of times, because it's easier to lust after someone and get that immediate gratification, that's the first thing that we lean into. Rather than trying to learn someone and love after them versus learning to lust after them. It's like you learn somebody enough to, appreciate them. Like, ooh, she's cute and she likes this and she likes that. And so you pick up on these outward things that you notice to attract them or accommodate that attraction, not really understanding what's inside of them. And when we lust after the outwardness of a person, that's where the artificial love comes in. It's not love, it's lust.
It's lust. It's lust. So you lust and then you find out they crazy. Okay? Well, come on now. We in 2024.
Oh, so that goes to the Bible, the verse, right? So you have referenced Proverbs 20, right?
Yep.
The purposes of a person's heart are deep waters, but one who has insight draws them out. Many claim to have unfailing love, but a faithful person who can find. And so, for me, it makes me think about your purpose, right? What is your purpose with my heart? What are your intentions? A lot of us profess that we love unconditionally, without condition, without standard, without fault or expectation. But where is this faithful person, right? And so, leaning into the first question and this current question, your relationship, what's your relationship like with God? Are you dealing with your traumas? I think that this hits on both of those questions.
Because even with the deep waters in Proverbs 20 and 5, and it says again, the purposes of a person's heart are deep waters, but one who has the insight draws them out. So by you dealing with your trauma,
Right.
by you seeking a life coach, which we both are, by seeking your counselor, your bishop, your psychologist, whoever, to get that insight and direction is key.
Yeah.
Because those deep waters, they're going to come out. At least you're going to get to the point that you can functionally date somebody. You know what I mean? You can date someone. Because if you bust it wide open, you can't date them. Okay? You can't.
No. So
you can't. You showing everything about you.
Yeah.
But what's in your heart and in your mind and in your spirit?
What my grandparents used to say, why he gonna buy the cow if you already gave him the milk? And so a lot of times
even though some women busted wide open and they get their husband and they've been married 35, 40 years, but that don't work out like that for everybody, and you don't know what they did to get there.
Hey, that part, right?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just thought about that.
That's so true. I lost my train of thought.
But that does happen. It's
but
like,
it does.
But when I'm celibate and I wait, the relationship goes nowhere. But that goes back to my relationship with God. Okay, so it didn't work out. I waited. They didn't want to wait. They dipped off on me. They weren't for me in the first place.
So
I just had to say that, though.
I can remember.
I had to rant on that.
But I remember a time in my life where I was little in my faith, and I was scared to talk to people about God because I felt like it would steer them away from me, because a lot of people don't want to hear about God. But what I've learned in my transforming and growth and development, they don't want to hear about God, then they not for me. And a lot of times, because it's easier to avoid things, to go into that space, we put God at the back seat
and go ahead and go with,
because we think that it's easier, not realizing that we just creating more traction and turmoil for ourselves. But a lot of the times, we get into these relationships, and because we don't have boundaries, standards, and expectations, we do things inappropriately, like as if we're married, right? We end up moving in with this person,
done that,
and we carry out a lifestyle as if we're married, but we're really cohabitating, or what my people would say, shacking, right? And that's where we get lost and we go astray, because we're doing things that we haven't set a foundation for.
None. Two people walking blind. I'm talking about two grown professional people walking blind. Been there, done that. That's what we do. We settle. Because even the man settles too.
Yeah. And, even though, our focus is to, touch other women, this goes both ways for men and women. Like, equally, a lot of the things that we talk about in regards to, women and our relationships, our counterparts equally partake in that. And so, we all have to heal. We all have to work on ourselves. I realize that when you're in these situationships and you have no plan and purpose, you just constantly going in this circle, and the same things are going to happen over again.
Over and over and over again.
And it's easy to believe that you're committed to something, right? Because you're living with somebody, and, your life is appearing to be a certain way. But if you can't how can you commit yourself, your life, your purpose, and being in connection with somebody else if you can't commit to God? Question 3, right? Reason why you may not be ready to date is if you have problems keeping commitments. Can you make a commitment to yourself, to God? What's that look like?
Do you know where you're going to be in a year or two? Have you made a commitment? Have you made a 3-year commitment? Because I really don't believe in goals. But what's going on? Like, where do you want to be in your life? Where do you want God to take you? What are your dreams for your spouse? Have you wrote that down? Have you wrote down, if I want to be debt free? One of mine is, I want to be debt free by the time I'm 50. Like, have you really looked into how many things you've committed to in your life and stuck with them? Stuck with it. Because if you didn't stick it out, could be a chance in dating you might be a little rocky, because, What are your commitments like? Do you have long-term commitments set up for the future? Do you have short-term commitments or goals? Because I know everybody's used to hearing goals, but you have to look at that. What are those? Because when that man comes and you start dating him and he asks you what you want out of life, you want to say, I don't know. You want to say, I want a house. I want a house. I want to go on vacation. I want to travel. You want stuff.
That's not a husband.
Right.
That's
Woo!
stuff.
That's stuff.
That's stuff.
That's stuff.
Oh, so overall, right, with, the 3 questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is your relationship like with God?
Mm-hmm.
Are you working through and dealing with your traumas?
Mm-hmm.
And are you able to make a commitment? Overall, it just makes me reflect back on my periods of singleness. Mm-hmm. And it makes me think, dive into self-reflection about, how was I behaving? How was I, what was I doing? How was I acting? What habits and behaviors and actions, have kept me from having, a successful relationship that leads to marriage. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I found that for a long time, I thought being single meant that just doing whatever, because I wasn't committed to anybody else, right? And what that looked like was, whoever I wanted to be with, whenever I wanted to be with them, or did not want to be with them, whether that was emotionally or physically or intimately. I was just doing whatever I wanted to do. And I think at that there have been points in my life where I never had intentions on wanting to be married. So I was just having fun, right? And experiencing life, but I also was disconnected from God. I also, I've always had a relationship with him, but I've been on a fence for a lot of my relationship with God, and I put him in the back seat, when I want to do what I want to do until I need him again. And that has shown me in my life that it doesn't work that way. It's either you're in or you're out. Either you believe or you don't believe. And coming to a point where, as I get older and I grow and develop into this virtuous woman that he is creating me to be, I do desire a husband. I do desire companionship and somebody to grow and love and nurture with, and and seek God with.
And you're reaching your goals too, your commitments.
Yeah. But we can't do that if we're out here, right, living that playful, do whatever I want, fulfilling my satisfaction type of life. And so what I learned about the part about being successfully single, because anybody can be single, but what does success mean and look like to you? And what I found for me and in my singleness is learning to be okay with myself. A lot of people have a problem with being alone. And they don't realize that, because they're lonely, right? And it's these words, alone, right? By myself. No, I have come to a full passion about being with myself, right? And so I found that I've had to be with myself to dig through some of the hurts and traumas that I had that have triggered me and caused me to behave in hurtful and, bad ways. Right. And that it's important that if I do want a husband, that I need to prepare myself and have this stable foundation that's ready for me to connect with another person who is also stable and ready, their foundation, so that we can come together in God and prosper and move forward. And so just in my seasons of singleness, just knowing and understanding the importance of self in relation to my with God.